What if the most dangerous thing about drugs wasn't the drugs themselves? What if it was bad psychology weaponized by politics? For decades, public drug education has relied on fear conditioning rather than the actual neuroscience of what's going on. Behavioral psychologists call this aversive conditioning through symbolic association. Aversive conditioning through symbolic association. Pair a substance with a crime, pair it with social decay, and the brain stops asking questions. Harry Anslinger, the architect of the war on drugs, once said, "Lead the youth into a world of illusions, and they will become the walking dead." He wasn't talking about a chemical. He was talking about a narrative. But biology doesn't care about propaganda. Humans have pursued altered consciousness for 50,000 years. Anthropologists call this pharmacology of meaning. Your brain didn't evolve to avoid altered states. It evolved to explore them cautiously. Today, we're performing a psychological autopsy on the drug war. We're going to look at what actually happens in the brain during a trip, the staggering medical potential of MDMA, and the ridiculous lies told by politicians that set our understanding back 50 flippin' years. I don't support drug use, period. I support cognitive sovereignty. You can't make a choice if your map of reality is fake. Stay with me because within the next 10 minutes, I'm going to reveal specific reward prediction glitches that make just saying no a biological joke. Plant that thought, politicians. We'll call this next segment the hijacked history. Traditional psychedelic use always occurred in highly structured ceremonial contexts. Structure changes how the brain encodes an experience. Without structure, chemicals become escapism. With structure, they become the tools for identity consolidation. Drug panics follow a predictable sociological pattern. Associate a chemical with an out group, right? In the 1930s, it was marijuana and Mexican immigrants, right? Politicians realized fear spreads faster than data because the amygdala processes threat signals faster than the prefrontal cortex processes evidence. Kind of sounds like politics, right? Keep them afraid so they don't do their thinking. Listen to Richard Nixon in 1971, right? He basically said America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. What? Science did not back that jack up. Science did not back him up. I mean, his own hand-picked Schaefer Commission told him marijuana shouldn't be illegal. Yeah, you know what he did? He threw the report in the trash. And then you can consider guys like Ronald Reagan, who famously claimed, "There is no question anymore that marijuana is probably the most dangerous drug in America." No. At that exact moment, alcohol, a neurotoxin, was killing 100,000 people a year. That wasn't a policy. It was psychological operation. Right? Gotta get the money from the alcohol lobbyists. But lucky for you, we don't live in the era of Reagan. We live in a clinical renaissance. I mean, modern research at Johns Hopkins and New York University, they're proving that these dangerous molecules might be the most potent tools that we actually have in the medical profession for mental repair. I mean, we've got psilocybin, magic mushrooms. I mean, the real-time effect is within 40 minutes of ingestion, psilocybin mimics serotonin and binds to the 5-HT2A receptors. It forces the DMN, the default mode network, which, as we've talked about before, is basically the seat of your ego. It's also the seat of your ruminations. But what psilocybin does, it makes it go quiet. And as the default mode network shuts down, parts of your brain that haven't really spoken since you were a toddler, they start to communicate. This is called entropy increase. You don't hallucinate. You see the world without the filter of your ego. As Steve Jobs once said, right? Steve Jobs, I mean, this is a famous guy here, a famous voice, right? He once said taking LSD was a profound experience, one of the most important things in my life. It reinforced my sense of what was important. That was right from Steve Jobs. I mean, what about MDMA? The real-time effect is that MDMA floods the brain with oxytocin and serotonin, the bonding chemical, and basically the happy mood chemical. And it simultaneously suppresses the amygdala. So in real time, your fear center is actually paralyzed. This allows trauma survivors to open the file of their worst memory without the heart attack response. It's not a party drug. It is a somatic reset. I mean, Carrie Fisher, right? Carrie Fisher, the famous Carrie Fisher, Princess Leia. I mean, she was always honest about her own drug use, right? She said drugs made me feel more normal. They contained me. I mean, she was self-medicating, right? She was self-medicating a bipolar brain because the clinical world hadn't caught up to the chemistry yet. And she was doing it effectively. And she had a very long, productive career. But I mean, let's talk about the spectrum of feeling, right? I mean, real-time neurochemistry. Let's talk about the hard stuff. We're not going to talk about the scary version because, quite frankly, I've done that on another episode in this podcast. But we're going to talk about the biological reality of what these chemicals do to your hardware in real time. Because, quite frankly, no one ever talks about this stuff. And kids and adults are using this stuff without any knowledge of what it's going to do. So let's talk about LSD and ketamine, right? The psychedelic surge, if you will. LSD, it is the ultimate signal-to-noise manipulator. It binds so tightly to serotonin receptors that it actually folds a lid over them. And it stays there for like 12 hours. In real time, what does this look like? Well, your thalamus, right, it's your brain's sensory switchboard. It tells, where messages need to go. Well, it stops filtering sensory data. You see the light waves. You hear the textures, right? I mean, you're in a full-blown, hallucinogenic state at this point. What about ketamine? This is a dissociative anesthetic. It blocks NMDA receptors, which causes a disconnection between the physical body and the consciousness. Within hours, it triggers synaptogenesis, which is really the literal growth of new neural connections. I mean, this stuff is amazing under the care of a therapist. It's like a fertilizer for a depressed brain. And if you're in a serious depression or anxiety loop, right, something like this, I would suggest checking into this with your therapist or finding a therapist that will do this for you. Just thought, I'm not telling you to, I'm saying it could help. It could help. It's your choice. What about depressants, right? Alcohol, Xanax, stuff like this. Because depressants are a shotgun drug, right? They hit almost every system. And that's why they're so dangerous, to be fair. It increases GABA, which is the slowdown chemical. It inhibits glutamate, which is the go chemical. And so in real time, your cerebellum fails to coordinate movement and your hippocampus stops encoding memories, leading to the blackout. I mean, why do you think drunks, right? People who have been drinking alcohol for so long, why do you think they're all stumbling around even when they're not drinking? It's because their cerebellum, the part that also is about balance in your system, is wiped out. I mean, there's so much scar tissue in that piece. right? That it can't perform normally. Good luck passing the old what's it, walking the line test if you've been a drunk for the past 25 years, right? Even if you're not drunk, good luck walking that straight line. It ain't happening. And then you've got the benzodiazepines, things like Xanax, right? And this is targeted to strike on GABA A, right? The GABA A receptors. And it doesn't just relax you. It actually chemically paralyzes the anxiety response, right? The danger, your brain compensates by reducing its own GABA production. So these drugs, while they might produce euphoric feelings, they might do things in the moment, they actually mess with your actual brain chemicals, right? And when you stop taking the Xanax, all of a sudden your brain has no brakes left, which, honestly can lead to potentially fatal seizures. You've also got the stimulants, right? I mean, these are nasty little boogers. They really are. Cocaine, Adderall, methamphetamine, stuff like this. Cocaine basically blocks the dopamine reuptake transporters. It's your brain's reward system, right? And I want you to imagine it for a second like a sink. Well, cocaine plugs the drain. The dopamine keeps building up, right? And it creates a state of hypervigilance, super sort of like, focus. The real-time toll is your heart spikes, right? Your heart rate spikes, your blood vessels constrict, right? And your brain interprets this as the behavior is vital for survival. As Hunter S. Thompson famously said, I hate to advocate drugs, alcohol, violence, or insanity to anyone, but they've always worked for me, baby. You could take the baby part off, and that's his quote. He was describing the functional stimulant trap. They helped him get things done. They helped him, make sure his life was always on the go, but it wasn't good for him. There's also the opioids, right? Fentanyl, heroin, oxycontin, things like this. And what these things do is bind, to the opioid receptors, the same ones, right, that process maternal bonding, right, the mu opioid receptors. They don't just kill physical pain. I mean, they kill existential pain, right? And that's why they're so addictive. What happens in real time, though? What's going on in your body? I mean, your breathing slows, right? Respiratory depression. And that's why so many people don't wake up for this crap. Their heart stops. I mean, the pupils pinpoint, and the brain's safety signal is permanently stuck on truth. As Keith Richards put it, it's not a search for a thrill. It's a search for a way to get through the day. But we've also got to talk about the new stuff, right? The new stuff that you can find at gas stations and wellness shops, right? Because it's legal, right? And people are assuming that it's safe. And while it might not be as dangerous as things like alcohol in some contexts, it's not safe. It's a pharmacological Wild West. I mean, you've got kratom, right? Which is basically just an herbal opioid. I mean, kratom is a tropical leaf from Southeast Asia. In low doses, it's a stimulant. In high doses, it binds to those same mu opioid receptors, just like morphine, oxycontin, stuff like this, right? And the problem is, it is largely unregulated. One batch might be tea, the next might be spiked with heavy metals or high potency extracts that lead to a withdrawal profile identical to heroin. It's an accidental addiction waiting to happen. So kids and adults, you probably should stay away from this stuff unless you want an addiction to opioids. They actually use it to help, treat addictions to opioids. It's kind of like, what was the one back in the day? Methadone, not as strong. You've also got Delta 8, Delta 10, you've got THC-H, THC-P, and stuff is chaos, right? What happened is Congress passed this thing called the Farm Bill in 2018. And because, these are not the most intelligent of people, they accidentally legalized hemp-derived cannabinoids while being against the legalization of marijuana. Now, what is Delta 8? It is a chemical cousin to Delta 9, standard weed. It's produced by using strong acids, basically, to convert CBD into THC. So they got around it. It's a loophole, right? They were able to extract THC from the actual hemp. I mean, you're not just smoking a plant at this point, right? You're smoking a lab experiment. What about THC-P? Now, this is a heavy hitter. This is the new heavy hitter on the market, and research suggests it can be up to 33 times more potent at the CB1 receptor than standard THC. Now, what this means is you're going to feel higher and it's going to last longer. Users report trips that last up to 24 hours and cause intense paranoia. I mean, your brain's endocannabinoid system, it's not designed for that level of saturation. It's just not. It's like trying to power a light bulb with a lightning bolt, especially heavy use. What about the gas station boner pills, right? The Zen blends, right? Well, these usually contain or often contain something called phenibut, right? It's a powerful Russian anti-anxiety drug that causes horrific withdrawal. Or you've got synthetic tianeptine, right, which is dubbed the gas station heroin, right? Because these aren't scheduled, right, politicians ignore them until people start dying. It is the height of hypocrisy, right? Banning mushrooms while allowing synthetic opioids to be sold next to Slim Jims. This ain't good, folks. And this is teaching your kids that certain things are okay when they're not, and other things that might help their brain, help them form their identity, especially if they're suffering from some type of severe sort of traumatic, depression or anxiety. Stuff like with mushrooms under the care of a therapist can actually help them. Now, I've talked a lot about some of the positive effects, or at least the real-time effects that people are sort of going through during drug use. But now we need to do the autopsy of the downside, right? I don't support drug use because I've seen the neurodegeneration that occurs when a reward loop is hijacked. There's something called incentive sensitization. The 50% bolster, right? Robinson and Berridge, they proved that dopamine shifts from liking to wanting. From liking to wanting. Eventually, the addict doesn't just enjoy the drug. Their brain is just sensitized to the cues. They see a glass pipe or a needle and their dopamine spikes before the drug even hits their system, right? This is called stimulus generalization. This is all done through something called classical conditioning. This is why willpower is a deep myth, right? Look, in addiction, willpower has nothing to do with it. The dorsal striatum, the brain's habit center, it takes over from the ventral striatum, which is the goal center. You aren't choosing to use at this point. Your brain is performing a reflex as deep as breathing. You have trained yourself to need this thing, to crave this thing, and you're not even getting the same enjoyment out of this thing. What about the prefrontal thinning? Chronic use of high-potency substances, including high-potency legal THC-P, physically, this thins the prefrontal cortex. Guys, this is the CEO of your brain, and when the CEO is fired, the limbic toddlers run the show. You lose top-down control, making you more impulsive, making you more aggressive, and less capable of long-term planning. And there's an allostatic shift, right? In healthy brains, your mood returns to a baseline, right, after a short period of time. In an addicted brain, the baseline actually drops. This is known as allostasis, right? You now need the drug just to reach the 0 point where a normal person starts their freaking day at. You are effectively living in a hedonic deficit, where the only way to stop the pain is the very thing causing the damage. Right, this is also known as negative reinforcement. You got to take this stuff just to stop feeling like crap. There's a social toll, right? When we criminalize a chemical, we create a black market, which by definition has no quality control, right? So the fentanyl crisis, for instance, is a direct psychological result of the war on drugs. If you ban a weak version, the market provides a stronger, more lethal one. Nice job, politicians. I mean, the famous comedian George Carlin put it perfectly. Why is it that most of the people who are against abortion are people you wouldn't want to in the first place? I mean, he was pointing out that policy is often made by people the least affected by the reality of the struggle. And quite frankly, what we found today is these people weren't just the least affected, they were the least knowledgeable, or maybe they were just being insincere for political reasons. Narrative. Rhetoric. But guys, again, how do you navigate a world filled with chemical landmines and quite frankly, irresponsible messaging from both sides of the aisle, right? The pros and the cons. I mean, you have to use what's known as the sovereignty protocol. Learn the reward system. You have got to understand that dopamine is learning chemistry, not pleasure chemistry. If you realize that the drug is just tricking your learning software, the spell starts to break. You need to protect your hardware. I mean, if you're under 25, especially, your brain is still under construction. Every substance you add is a potential structural defect in your future executive control. Guys, I'm not telling you to do drugs after 25, but you sure as hell shouldn't be doing them beforehand. You need to regulate before you start to escape, right? Here's another tactic. Most addiction starts as an attempt to regulate a dysregulated nervous system, period, right? You are not equipped in some way to handle whatever's going on in the old brainy poo, and so you reach for that cocktail, right? But before you reach for that chemical, reach for a somatic reset, right? Intense exercise, cold exposure, right? Jump into one of those ice baths or something. Deep social bonding, right? These things will all help to sort of mitigate the craving for a drug, for that quick fix, right? You also need to audit the set and the setting. Psychology matters as much as chemistry. If you are in a bad set, mindset, the drug will only amplify the noise. The human brain is a meaning making machine that occasionally gets fooled by its chemistry. I mean, sometimes substances can heal, but sometimes they can destroy. But most of the time, they simply reveal what your nervous system is trying to hide. That's it. Now, next week, we're getting deep into tattoos, piercings, scarification, right? Body dysmorphia, all the body stuff. We're going to talk about what starts these things, why people continue to do these things, the pros and the cons of these things. But if you loved what we talked about today, if you enjoy the drug content, the real truth about drugs, then subscribe to Planting Thoughts, right? I'm not your regular teacher who's going to feed you a bunch of lines from a textbook that is so outdated, it's still talking about the 1950s and 60s and Reefer Madness. We're not talking about Nixon here. Guys, subscribe to Planting Thoughts because it will help increase your brain power. I'm Mike. Plant wisely, my little succulents.